statuses and substatuses.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. In today's session, I'm going to talk about our different statuses and substatuses that you will find as part of your results. I'm going to do a thorough deep dive going through each status and each substatus to really give you a better understanding of how and why these statuses would be results that you would receive as part of your validation. So in the platform, you can see we do provide high-level statistics here and different statuses. These are our main status categories, which is valid, invalid, catch-all, spam trap, abuse, do not mail, and unknown. And from a very high level, the valid email addresses are emails that we were able to identify as having an inbox and should accept mail. These are good, clean emails that you should be able to send to and have full confidence in. The invalid emails are emails that are no longer existing, are no longer in use, and this can be for a multitude of reasons, which the substatus will help you understand if you need it. And I'll talk more about that as I go through it. You do not want to mail an invalid email address. It is a total waste of time, and it's going to hurt your sending reputation. Catch-alls are a status that is set up, and it's a configuration that's actually set up on the domain for that the mail admin would have set up. So catch-all, what that really means is, and it's highly used in the B2B world, in the business domains, because what they're worried about is employees churning and email addresses churning. And so ultimately what it's doing is it will route to someone or maybe a group. And so let's give an example here of John, who used to work at ZeroBounce. John no longer works at ZeroBounce, but John at ZeroBounce.net is now a catch-all email address. And so what that means is our mail server is going to say, John at ZeroBounce.net, well, no, he doesn't really have an email account, but because of the way we've configured our domain, that email will be accepted, and then we're going to route it based on rules that we have in the back end of our mail administration system. You have no control over that as a sender. It is purely done on the receiver side, and it is behind a gate, meaning that absolutely no one can see what you're doing there, and there's no visibility towards it whatsoever. All we can say is that we are confident it's a catch-all domain, and we go through various tests to determine that. It's a riskier place to send to because we don't know, and you don't know, ultimately who is getting that email. But that does not mean they're useless and you shouldn't accept them and they're terrible. It's just a status. We cannot confidently tell you if we know if this is the right email address that you're intending to send to or not. I also want to just be very clear. This is do not look at catch-all as a role-based email such as support, info, hello at. That's not technically a catch-all. That's a group email, and that's different, and that's in the do not mail category. Catch-all has nothing to do with the prefix. It has everything to do with the domain. And so again, just be careful here, and we'll talk about more use cases. Spam traps. These are email addresses that are set up specifically to hurt you as a sender if you are sending to them. And the reason being is that you really shouldn't have a spam trap on your list. The really only reasons spam traps are out there, they were designed for the mail servers and the ISPs to go ahead and put out email addresses on websites that ultimately get scraped by some of the bad actors out here that are selling data. And that scraped data then gets added to a list, and then people are purchasing that list. And then if you send to that spam trap, it's an automatic red flag, and they're going to blacklist you as a sender. Why? Well, because they know you should have never had that email address in the first place. There's two different types of spam traps. There's recycled and there's pristine. A recycled spam trap would be something like a very old Yahoo account that hasn't been accessed in 10 years. Yahoo has determined that this has been abandoned. It's not signing up. There's no activity. There's nothing they can see with that email address that's happening. And so therefore, they will actually recycle it into a spam trap and then monitor that spam trap email address and blacklist all the people who are mailing to it because you shouldn't have been mailing to it. There's also pristine spam trap, which are designed specifically. They were created with the intent that they're going to be a trap. Sometimes these are very obvious, like spam trap at the domain. Most times, they want to be a little bit more sneaky than that. We do have a spam trap database. We do constantly get feeds of this database, and we're developing them on our own. And so we're collecting and sourcing these in many ways. These are very bad. You don't want them on your list. You should have never sent to them in the first place. Abusers. These are valid email addresses, but what is different here is that they're what we would consider known complainers. So a complainer in our world is someone that will mark you as spam if you send an email address to them, and specifically mark you as spam, not unsubscribe. So unsubscribe is okay. You want your customers to unsubscribe if they don't want your newsletters. You can't get too caught up here and don't let them unsubscribe. You want them to be able to unsubscribe it, because if they can't, the next thing they'll do very quickly is mark you as spam, and that actually sends a loop back to the mail servers and says, hey, this is a spammer. That's really bad for your sending reputation. Now, I get a lot of questions about this. Should I use the abusers or should I not? And here's the easiest way for me to look at it, but it is very high level. You have to look at your business use case. If you are collecting data and we validate that email address and come back as an abuser, for example, you have a sign-up form, or you have a mobile application, or you're a fast food restaurant, and someone's trying to sign up on your app and we mark them as an abuser, I would accept that registration and I would continue to work with them as if they're a valid email address. So the reason for that is they are opting into your platforms. They're opting into your services, your marketing, or whatever you're providing. And therefore, the chance of them marking you as spam is really low because they're opting in for this. And so that's the case of where I would accept it. Where I would not accept it is if you have not emailed these people in the past, they are not familiar with you. If you acquired a list, you should not mail these people. They are going to mark you as spam and just start beating up your reputation. Make sure these emails would be not part of your sends and your sending campaigns. The do not mail, there's lots of little reasons here, and so I'll go ahead and go through them in particular in just a bit. But these are email addresses that we just consider them to be more risky. And so ultimately, you have to make some business decisions if you want to use them. And the substatus will help you here. I'll go through those as well. Unknown just means that we were not able to establish a connection. Maybe the mail server went offline. Maybe a downstream or upstream internet provider went offline. And ultimately, we're not able to establish a validation. And we're not able to give you a confident result. Therefore, we throw it into an unknown bucket. We are historically and continuously improving and being really the lowest provider of unknown rates. We have always averaged under 1%, and that's because we're constantly maintaining the platform to break through those barriers and go back and retry and do all these other things. And so with that, these are our high-level status indicating codes, which will break down your list for you. And if I have to really quickly summarize this, valid is okay to send to, invalid do not send to, catch all, I would segment those and put them into their own list after you've gone through a scoring process. Spam traps, absolutely do not send to them. Abusers, make that decision. Are they opting into my content or did I acquire them? If you acquired them, do not mail to them. If they opted in, they're okay. Do not mail. These are a little bit gray. I would say generally, I wouldn't do any cold emailing to these type of people. I wouldn't do anything that they weren't expecting. So I would put these very similar to the abusers. If they're expecting your email, it's probably okay. If they're not expecting your email, do not mail them. And unknowns are just the ones that we don't have the results for. So with that, I'm going to go into our documentation, which is going to go through. So these are our status codes that we just went through. And I'm going to talk more about some of these substatus codes, which I think are really important for people to understand. And for the guys who are really just techie or really want to get into the nitty gritty and maximize the list as much as they possibly can, these substatus codes will help you. So invalid, there's really no issues here, but we are pointing out some things that we found, such as an alias address. These might be forwarding emails. These might be ones that we know for a fact are really just, they're out there and they're an alias. So an example of this, just for conversation talk, would be Brian@ZeroBounce.net might be my real email address, but I might have B@ZeroBounce.net. That might be my alias. Just for the record, that is not, but I'm giving you an example here. Leading period removed. This is also another one where people can put periods in front of their Gmails. It's particularly done in Gmail and G Suite, where periods ultimately mean nothing in that mail world. G Suite just lets people use periods, but they really don't actually exist on the mailbox. And so if there's a leading period, meaning the email address starts with a period, we remove it because that'll make sure that it's compatible with all mailing systems. Alternate, this is a really interesting one, but these are valid emails, but they're likely to be a secondary email to the customer or to the person that you have. So alternate emails generally have, they see much less engagement. They're usually kind of people who have a real inbox, but they kind of don't want to be in all this marketing and get flooded there. So they'll set up a second email address. And generally what we see there is a bunch of combinations of letters and numbers. And then ultimately we'll go ahead and say this is an alternate email address, where it's more of their secondary, if that's how you want to look at it as well. And so again, they're okay to send to, they're okay to accept, no problems. We're just kind of giving you a heads up, this might not be their primary inbox. So for invalids, and again, these are all okay to send to, no issues. For invalids, this will kind of break down into some multiple reasons, but again, you don't want to send to any of these. Here's some of the reasons why we would get invalid. So it's not accepting mail. So these might be set up through DNS checks where the mail server does not allow us to send any mail to it. They only send mail outbound. They do not accept anything inbound. And so you don't want to mail towards it. And that might be an email address that might be in your inbox, for example, because you received something. So then you want to try to put it onto your outbound mailing list. Don't do that. This is clearly telling us that it's going to bounce. Failed syntax check. This is pretty basic here, but this doesn't have the @ symbol. This doesn't have the the .com, the .net, whatever it requires at the end to have a proper syntax of email. The possible typo, this is something that really is a nice feature, especially if you have a sign up form and you're using our real-time validator. But the possible typos is where we are able to detect that the domain, and this is really for a lot of the big and popular domains, were spelled wrong. And so we're going to give you back a status of invalid, possible typo as the substatus. And then we have a column on the data that will say, did you mean? And what we're doing is we're suggesting the typo fix. So something really you can do a nice job on your sign up forms. If you're catching this, you can serve that response that we provide you up and say something like, did you mean, we found a typo in your domain. Did you mean this one instead? We are seeing, especially on mobile, lots of typos on the domains. People are moving so fast, they're not even looking. Boom, submit. We have lots of customers that implement something like that. I would highly, highly recommend it. Mailbox not found. This is about the most generic invalid you can get. We went to go connect to the mail server. It doesn't exist. And so mailbox not found. You don't want to send anything here. No DNS entries. And so these would be valid in syntax, but they don't have any DNS entries. And therefore, if you were to send mail, it's just going to go into La La Land because there's nowhere for it to be routed into a proper mailing system such as Gmail or an Outlook account or whatever it might be. And so if there's no DNS entries on the domain, it's basically saying the domain is a dud. So everything on that domain is going to come back as invalid because there's nothing there. Mailbox quota exceeded. These are ones that I'm sure we've all experienced them at some point. The message bounced back. There's no more space left in the inbox. So it is invalid because it's not going to accept mail. You're going to get a bounce message on that. But this might be something you want to go back and check again down the road because maybe they opened up the quota and now you can send mail to them again. So I would kind of watch those to see if you have any and maybe revalidate them in a month or two. The unroutable IP address, these are just domains that we're just not able to route to an IP that makes sense. So it's invalid, it's going to bounce. The catch-alls, I know I went into pretty good detail on previously, but again, this is a domain level setting on the domain of the receiver of the email. This has nothing to do with you as a sender, and this has nothing to do with what I'm going to call the prefix of the email address, which is before the @ symbol. So it has nothing to do with the support @ the sales @ emails. This is not what catch-all means. Catch-all is domain level setting that allows any email address to be sent to. I can literally punch the keys at that domain. It's going to take the mail server at the gate is going to accept it. What's happening behind the scenes is the administrator of the mailbox might say, well, you know what? Bounce that email. And so that's why it's also very risky because we cannot determine if it will bounce. And then secondly, it might say, okay, you don't have to bounce it, but let's send it over here. And so maybe that goes to some other person that is no longer really relevant to what you're doing, and now they go and mark you as spam. That's kind of the issue with catch-alls and why they're a little bit risky. Again, if someone's opting in and they're using it, they're okay. You can work with them, they're okay. But just be a little cautious, especially if this is a acquired list of some sort. Catch-alls can cause a lot of troubles. Spam traps, and we already went through that. You do not want to be emailing any spam traps. We do not have any substatuses here. They are really just, it's bad. Do not send to them. The abusers, we did talk about them, but I just want to be clear here that how we determine this is because we are receiving large data feeds from known providers and node sending partners and signal providers as well. And so when we see that this email is marking email as spam 10 or more times, we then call them an abuser and a complainer. Now, just to be even more clear, the emails that they marked as spam had the opportunity to do an unsubscribe instead, and they chose not to use unsubscribe. They chose to use mark as spam. That's the big issue here, and that's why you got to be a little cautious here. And if they are not expecting your emails, do not send to the abusers. If they're expecting it, it's okay. And to be clear, these do have inboxes. These are real emails. They work, and people will interact with that. So you have to make a business decision if it's right for you to send to these or not. The do not mails. So again, these are some of the role-based. So the role-based, we'll get there, I guess, but global suppression is where we'll start. We have some global suppression lists that we work with, ISP complainers, direct complainers, purchased emails, things of this nature that we've created a list of these. And if you go against them, it's really just a bad idea. I would not send to global suppression. The possible traps are maybe spam traps. We don't know for sure, but we're catching them and kind of flagging saying, hey, caution here, right? Yellow light, if you want to think about it that way. We don't know if it's a spam trap or not. Again, I would probably remove these emails. I would not send to them, especially if they are not, opted in or signing up onto your service. The role-based emails, this is a really good use case of how, as a business, I would take some business decisions into these substatuses, which is why I really want to go through them today. The role-based emails, these are the sales at, the info at, the contact at, and these are the emails that provide, they're generally groups, right? So role-based emails are generally groups. And why they are kind of iffy and why you need to pay attention to them is because imagine you sent to a group like sales at, let's say it's sales at apple.com, right? You send to sales at apple.com and just imagine that every single sales rep that Apple had received your email. You might be thinking to yourself, this is great. It's not. And here's why. Because if you send to the role base and you send to the sales email, and then all of these people that just received your message mark you as spam, you're going to have a massive spam rate and complaint rate because they were not expecting your emails. So this is, again, a little bit cautious here. I would definitely proceed with caution on any of these, and I would probably segment them out. And if you're seeing bad activity on them, do not mail them again in the future. So these can be good. Again, I would accept the registration. I would accept a mobile sign up using this email address. That's all fine. I would be cautious to send marketing material to these type of emails because you do not know how many people it's going to. And, again, I know everyone's optimistic, but we also have to be cautious in how much email we send and who it's going to, because marking you as spam is really bad for your reputation. The disposables, these are such a powerful piece of technology that's out there that a lot of people don't even know exists. Disposable emails are basically burner emails. They self-destruct. They last for a very short amount of time, and then they will literally poof, gone. And so you can quickly go to websites, and I'm not going to name them because I'm not here to promote disposable emails. They do have a use, and those are generally for people who are trying to get past gated content, or they're trying to get past, they want your coupon code, but they have to register with your newsletter in order to get it. So they can go onto a website, literally go onto a .com, 10-minute mail, for example. It's just the most popular one that I'm aware of. They can go there. They immediately receive an email address that they can send and receive to, and they'll use that email. They'll get your coupon code. They'll get your white paper, and then they're gone. And so I would not accept these emails, to be to be created on my platform. Maybe if you had an anonymous donation type of platform, you might want to accept those because people don't want to be known who they are. But in general, we see just bad acting happening on the disposable emails, and certainly you do not want to mail to them. So if I'm a business owner, I might want to accept the email to kind of use my system or to make a purchase or to check out. But I would not then turn around and then say, oh, great, this is a guy to remarket to, and this is an email address to use in the future. You don't really want to have a disposable email address for a long period of time. It's not going to be a good scenario for you. They're going to just bounce, and then you're going to keep sending to bounced emails. Again, these emails are designed to self-destruct within a certain amount of time, and each provider does it their own little way. Toxic. These are email addresses that are known for kind of abuse and spam or bot created emails. And so we do see these a lot. A lot of customers are asking us, like, how do I kind of fight some of these bots on my website? This will help with it. We'll flag them as do not mail toxic. I would not accept any of those. Again, these are generally emails created by bots and things to kind of break through. So don't send to those either, and don't accept them. The role-based catch-all. This is like the kicker of all kickers. This is the info at, but the domain is also a catch-all. I really do not recommend sending to these. You really have no clue. This is you're putting a piece of mail out into the wind and praying for the best. I personally wouldn't send to any of these. It's belonging to a catch-all plus a role-based. You have kind of two layers of possibility for problems. The MX forward. So these are emails that belong to a domain, but the domains and the MX records are forwarding somewhere else. And so this is a case where we see they're very similar to disposable domains. And so again, this is not something that I would accept and have as part of my database. And then lastly is the unknowns. These are, again, we cannot perform a successful validation. And so we're going to come with the status of unknown, and here's the substatuses. I'm not going to go through each one of them because they're sometimes very technical, but either there's an anti-spam system that we couldn't get through, there's an exception occurred, so something happened offline, we couldn't connect via SMTP, we got forcefully disconnected, the mail server didn't respond, there's a timeout that's taking too long. And so ultimately, my recommendation on any unknown, regardless of reason, is to wait a little bit and resend it back through our platform, because maybe we're able to break through the barrier the next time. Or maybe, again, the provider went down. This is very common. People don't really actually realize this. These providers or upstreams or go down, and therefore we can't connect. And so we're not saying they're bad. And we're not saying don't get rid of them. Unknown basically means resend it. And so come back to us and resend them again, and let's see if we can break through the barrier. And so these are the statuses and substatuses of ZeroBounce, and I really want to thank everyone for taking the time to watch this here with me today. The reason that we provide all of these statuses and substatuses is because we know that your business is not the same as everyone else's. And so you have to be able to make some fine-tuned decisions based on where you see your opportunity in your database, and these status and substatuses allow you to do that. So when you're looking at if you're looking at anything else and it's just thumbs up, thumbs down, this is good to send to, this is not good to send to, but they won't give you information like that, like what we show you here, you're missing opportunity. And so simple might look good, but simple also might be leaving a lot of stuff on the table that they're just going to say, nope, don't send to it. And a good example of that would be the abusers, right? Things like that where you might want to send to them. It might be okay for you, and it's not necessarily a problem. So make sure you have really good detailed information to make smart decisions with, and from there, you will be a much better sender. Thank you, everyone.